All right, well, it's my pleasure to be here this afternoon with some colleagues I've worked with for many years. During the first round of negotiations, I remember watching Peggy work on this process and sort of getting second and third hand stories about it, having no idea that I should have been paying much closer attention because I'd be involved in the second round. And I think it's kind of ironic that for both Alex and myself, you have to be careful what you negotiate because both of us subsequently moved from the international office to the program office and actually have to implement what it is that we all signed up to. Well, a lot of things changed in those intervening years after the signature of those original agreements that the first panel talked about. The Soviet Union was dissolved and Russia emerged. Some of our partner contributions, you heard Freddie talk about the desire for autonomy, and those original agreements had things in them like polar platforms and Hermes space plane and man-tended free flyer that were no longer being pursued. It was kind of an eye-opener for me to read the agreement the first time and see what all was in there and look at what program I actually had to start with. And so one of the first things we had to do was get a new baseline agreement among the original partnership to work from with our Russian colleagues. And also we had a new administration coming in the United States with some budget pressures and a desire to find ways to cut costs in NASA. So those political changes more broadly in the world and those budget pressures and other activities all combined to result in an invitation to Russia to join this partnership. So we're going to explore a little bit some different aspects of that partnership and how thinking in the partnership evolved. So Alex, I'm going to start with you. Here you were in Russia with an operating space station called Mir, and along comes this partnership inviting you to join our program. So tell us a little bit about what was Russia's objective in joining into this partnership.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for this question. I believe it is very appropriate to remember these times when we started discussions on the international project. Because listening carefully to the first panel, all of a sudden I recollected the times when we started first discussions with our partners, and I got myself on the idea that we actually had to renegotiate what was achieved by our predecessors on the Freedom Program, because we were talking about the different scope of partnership. Russia came at a time when absolutely right, the Soviet Union just fell apart, and the whole cooperative efforts among Soviet Union and the United States and other Western nations were limited to the science, mostly in the medical biological sphere. The only major accomplishment in the human spaceflight was Soyuz Apollo, and when we were considering what we can contribute, that was a dilemma, and a lot of arguments, listening to Peggy, the arguments in the administration, the same talking in Russia, because the way of thinking was mostly from the old days. Hey, we need to proceed with the national program. We do have something to say in space because we do have a competition. We had our Mir space station on orbit. We had plans to further develop and actually superseded by the new generation Mir 2, and we were actually in a position to make a determination what path to choose. Whether the wisdom having the international partnership within the international project, which we have, unique project on orbit, International Space Station, will be the best way to achieve goals of the space exploration for my country, or to go the old-fashioned way to perform a pure national program with international participation, as we had it on the solid space stations, on the Mir space station as well. And the first idea actually won the minds in the government and first of all in the agency. The Russian Space Agency was established in 1992. The same year I joined it, and next year, 1993, we started discussions with U.S. government in a broader sense on the variety of issues, including human spaceflight. It was on agenda. We're in a parallel efforts with the commercial endeavors on the commercial space launchers, how the market will evolve and the technology transfers. The human spaceflight was an agenda from the first days. And then this difficult process of 6 years. Difficult and interesting, because eventually we rewrote in many instances agreement, IGA and MOU. MOU with Russia for Roscosmos and NASA. It was brand new. It was no pre-existing document. Therefore, it took quite an effort. And the major, I believe, victory we had that through the precursor program of the called Shuttle Mir, when we accomplished absolutely amazing things, when the huge object as like a space shuttle first time docked to the space station, and we started discussions on that. The first question on the Russian side was, hey, if space shuttle will ruin our space station, who will blame for it? And that was a question from the cosmonaut, from Valery Rumin, who was sitting in a chair and said, hey, I need to understand, I am and that time he was a spaceflight director in Russian SIP, because shuttle was in active mode and the station naturally in a passive mode, and that's, if that will be a rough docking, then we will have a problem. And we spent, I believe, several days talking about this, jumping into the liability problem from the technical aspects. Today, we do not have such a problems, and that's a great accomplishment. Absolutely true that the great accomplishment is a trust which we built among the technical societies, scientific societies, on the grounds of different technical cultures, engineering cultures, first of all, different standards which we applied in the space area. We merged them. I believe we took best things from each other and converged into the comprehensive, integrated space station program which we have today.
Well, hearing everyone talk about the number of meetings that we had to try and agree on all these things reminds me of a comment that was made by one of my former bosses in Peggy's too, Ken Pedersen, who was particularly frustrated at one point, and he said, I know what the design of the space station is going to be. It's going to be a huge conference room. Well, as Alex said, it was kind of a renegotiation, although I think in the minds of the original partners, perhaps we didn't expect it to be quite such an extensive transformation. And I recall an early meeting where we put together a list of ideas of what changes should be made to the agreement in bringing Russia in. It was called the Minimalist Approach at the time. And as Alex suggested, Russia had some rather strong opinions, shall we say, about the nature of the partnership and what they needed. And once the door was opened, Europe walked through too. So, Pepe, you want to tell us a little bit about the evolution in Europe's thinking?
Yes, indeed. I would like to point out that, as it has been pointed out by several speakers before, when you have the real thing, it works, and you unavoidably agree and make it work. The different spirit is when you have to negotiate for a non-existing space station, and you have to figure out all the various cases. And I would like to say there is a psychological aspect that I would like to mention. Mind you, I started my career with the dawn of the space age. I am a slide rule engineer to start with. And I remember the first day I had a meeting with NASA, in NASA headquarters. I saw for the first time, you know, the how do you say, projection from the back and it was magic because we used the blackboard still. So it's a long way. And although you have heard that all the negotiation of the first MOU, in which I was a member of the negotiating team, aimed for a genuine partnership, and indeed it was a genuine partnership and so on and so forth, unavoidably, at least the way I felt and what you could read into the wording, Europe and ESA was somehow a junior partner. You cannot avoid. And to give you an example, for instance, it said that decision will be made by consensus, of course, because we are genuine partners. But if consensus cannot be reached, NASA will take the decision. And it was there. Now here comes Russia with a flying and working space station. I say, hey, what do you mean NASA takes a decision? And so that opened the door, as Lynn said, to renegotiate the MOU and the IGA. And Europe was in a non-easy position because, of course, we wanted to play loyal partner of NASA. We were the founding fathers, or among the founding fathers of this endeavor. And yet, Alexey opened the door for trying to make it somehow more genuine, the partnership. I don't remember exactly how we worked out the decision pattern, but certainly NASA and Roscosmos, as it was at the time, opened the door to a more genuine partnership. The end was that we renegotiated from top to bottom, and apparently, as everybody says, it works.
Okay. Another key area that we had to talk about, since after all the point of building the station is to use it, is what our operations and utilization concept would be. And there was a concept that was put together in the original agreements, and it was not one that Russia agreed with entirely, and we went through several iterations. So I'm going to ask Heinz, who works a lot in this field, to talk a little bit about ops and utilization concept, and then kind of how it all works now that we're really up there.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. The first round of negotiators bequeathed us a complex structure of planning at 3 levels. You saw Bill Gerstenmaier's chart of the operations centers spread globally. Lay on top of that the program offices and management organizations and technical organizations of each of the partners. And you have a hugely complex set of management interfaces. And the founding fathers attempted to simplify this by creating 3 layers of planning: strategic, tactical, and execution. And then they separated activities into utilization activities and operations activities, and established forums which I believe were intended to introduce a creative tension between the two, so that where the operators always wanted everything, so that everything could be perfect and everything would be backed up, but there wouldn't be any resources left to use the station for research or whatever anybody wanted. So that tension between operators and users, we had to work through. We're still dealing with that because obviously the safety of the crew on board and the vehicle itself is paramount. Utilization takes place in the margins. This elaborate structure it was also intended to balance everybody's national aspirations with the need for a central coordinating activity. So you had long debates about how much of the activity would be distributed to the other partners, and how much of it was integrated within NASA, and how much oversight NASA would have of everybody's activities. Then along came the invitation to Russia, and you had an existing space station program, an active program. And the world really changed, I think, and we saw that from the sidelines. We got some visibility from our NASA colleagues into what was going on. But basically, the station started operating as a Russian segment, and in one document it's called the American segment because there wasn't enough recognition of the American clients, Europe, Japan, and Canada. We're still experiencing that. There are people out who came with me who are much better versed in how the operations work. But as far as utilization goes, it seems as though there's an entirely separate Russian planning system and U.S. planning system. This has not hindered us significantly. Europe particularly, I know Japan, Canada have arrangements with our Russian colleagues for cooperation, for contracting for services. Canada's reaching out in that direction as well. In fact, that in spite of a fairly rigid structure for sharing the resources and accommodations on board the space station, what has grown up has been become a very collaborative and very complex, again complexity, a very complex set of relationships related to helping each other out to mutual benefit. So that's it.
Thank you. Well, Jim Zimmerman in his opening remarks mentioned in his list of attributes for space station participants, patience. One might call Japan our most patient partner in the sense that while the rest of us over time changed the nature of our contribution, we had a new partner come in with Russia. Japan was steadfast throughout with a laboratory concept that continues today, and two of the three elements of that are now on orbit. So I think the rest of us could maybe learn some lessons from Japan on how you sustained it through all the trials and tribulations of the rest of us. Yoshi?
I think conservative is kind of the culture of Japan, and I think we were the most conservative partner at that time, and when the Russian Korean joined, and it was 1994. We already spent 10 years without any outcome, and it is not a good political situation in Japan, and no enthusiastic support from the politicians to continue the space station program. So in that situation, what's happened, we reconsider all the scheme and design. It cannot stop the downsizing the space station. Even we have fear about to continue our space station program. And also, we already contracted out our total development cost, half of the total development cost, and we chose it is best way not to change any design, and hopefully to keep the all international agreement, especially the share of the common operation costs. Of course, we welcome the to increase the robustness because of the Russian participation, and we hope the reduction of the common operation cost. That is our situation.
I'm going to give my colleagues here a little bit of time to reminisce, maybe from a personal perspective, and ask each of them to share either their favorite moment in this program, or maybe something that surprised them. How have their expectations changed over the course of the program? So let me go back through. Alex, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Lynn. I'm afraid I can use a lot of time recalling many instances through the, actually, my 16 years in the program, starting from the first round of negotiations, and and today I'm head of Russian ISS program. I believe that the transition of expectations, or transformation rather of expectation, happened not quickly, especially on our side, because again, the space is a good mixture of policy matters, politics, and technology. And the decisions which we were taking, especially, for example, through the time when we were negotiating the Mir shuttle program, when NASA invited us in a bunker, which is for a secure facility in the Johnson Space Center, remotely located from the main buildings, which is half under the underground, with the signs on the door, no for classified discussions beyond this door when you enter in the men's room. And we were spending there quite a time, having the Russian segment and US segment already in this bunker, because there were big teams involved, and the specialists who were talking about the science program operations, legal matters. And that was quite a training, I would tell us. Then for transition to IGA negotiations, when we introduced this idea, which was not welcome from the very first time, that, hey, are we talking about the International Space Station, or we are talking about the national program with international participation, which is a different aspects and different meaning, for at least for us, I believe, for all partners eventually, which we evolved through the discussions, and we do have international space station program today, and it's very important that we get it in the United Nations premises today, talking about this program. Again, the criminal jurisdiction, I will fully agree with Mark Evans, and that's the clue game. That's modeling what will happen if. And that's exactly what was happening, that the modeling was for every hour, every day, what will happen if, because very many unknown situations were theoretically envisaged. How we will operate with the two prime mission control centers on the first stage, how they will interact, who will be in charge. And it's very logical that the one vehicle, even integrated vehicle as ISS, should have a kind of a leader which will define the overall operation. That's for NASA role, which we agreed as a basic principle, that NASA role for integration and coordination for the program will be for very well clearly assigned within the legal framework. And then those discussions which we held give us a lot of experience, I believe, and knowledge, how to interact, how to understand each other. And what we accomplished through the different times when the delays with the hardware, the tragedy with Columbia when we were flying in a limited crew, only 2 people were flying to orbit, when we suspended actually assembly, 3 years behind when we were considering that we will assemble space station within 5 years for a time frame and we will operate for another 10 years. Today, we are planning to complete it in 2010. And just this year, with the whole partnership, it was just a giant leap forward with the assembly, having the huge contributions of our partners on orbit. And it's a logical thing which I believe and hope that we will discuss next week during HOA here in Paris, what we will ask us ourselves and our governments to do with this program beyond 2015. And it's, I believe, very logical to expect that this project shall survive longer than we anticipated in the very beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Heinz, your turn.
Lynn, you've asked us to cast our minds back. I think there's 3 things trying to come out simultaneously, so you'll have to excuse me. There's a lesson to be learned. When we embarked on the what became the Freedom Program, there were a number of features in it which don't appear in the current space station. Things like solar dynamic arrays, things like a crew rescue vehicle. It had a crew of 8 at that time, and the lab, U.S. lab, was twice as long. The Columbus lab was considerably longer. We had the polar platforms. We had the man-tended free flyer. The polar platforms were intended to be serviced by shuttles from Vandenberg Air Force Base. I actually visited that facility once. It was mothballed very quickly when we discovered the shuttle didn't have significant payload capability to that orbit. I could go on. We had one of the key points was that we had the expectation of 5 shuttle flights a year, with 40% of the cargo capacity being utilization hardware, payloads, research equipment. That's tons. That's huge. So that's what we went in thinking we were getting. What we have now is a facility. Somebody has handed us lemons, you could say, if you were negative, and we are making excellent lemonade. Just excellent lemonade. We shouldn't feel too badly about those things that we lost along the way. We all have to understand each other's national processes for funding. But to me, that's a lesson. And it's a lesson that, it's a grid which we should place over the promises or the expectations of a subsequent partnership which we might be invited into. Thank you.
Thanks. Yoshi?
For me, it is most astonishing part of the program is to establish the relationship of many levels. I think the first time our heads gathered for the program was the second time the negotiation. I think after that we hold HOA almost every year, but anyway something happened. The heads of each agency gathers and discuss the results, and that kind of the relationship established a huge difference. Before, when we start the space station program, they rarely get together, and sometimes only the signing ceremony was just a courtesy purpose or something like that. But after the second set of the negotiation, they often, almost periodically meet together and discuss what the next. That is our most astonishing part of this program.
Okay, Pepe.
Lynn, I would like to give you some hints about, I would not even call them lessons learned, but things that I like to remember. For instance, when we started the negotiation with Russia, we faced a totally different aspect that we never explored so deeply. That was the business-like. Keep what you bring, pay for what crosses the interface, but no exchange of funds, so paying services, so go for launches, but how can you compare economies? Because the shuttle cannot be compared to Ariane, even less to Soyuz, so we had to invent a new currency, the upmass, whatever they mean to bring it up is upmass imperial. Or when I met, for instance, the very peculiar figure of the general designer. You would never see, or almost never see, in the Western culture, a general designer, a CEO that can bring you through the shuttle, to say, and knowing the shuttle inside out. But a Russian general designer led us through Mir, the mock-up on the ground, and knew everything, every bolt and nut of the... So that was something, or the culture of which you have seen an aspect in the repair of the solar array. NASA and Western culture in terms of engineering was fail-safe, the aircraft, the aviation approach. Whereas somebody qualified the Russian approach as a Navy approach. You repair on board. And that was all extremely interesting in this negotiation because it had impact also in the way you worded and prospected the things. But I would like to remember something that has to do with our Japanese friends. Japanese friends that we learned very soon to listen very carefully when they had some remark during the negotiation, because their effort to translate from their language or in their language, they were watching commas, semicolons, and or ors, and you all of a sudden found out that something had escaped to your attention. So we learned to listen very carefully to what our Japanese friend brought to the table. And still, I would like to be casual and candid and remember that one day in Tokyo, our friend and head negotiator, Otsuka, invited all of us to a hot spring toward the Fujiyama. You know, there is a dress code in negotiations. You have your tie, and behind your dress you keep your negotiation position, your identity. You represent, in the case of Europe, 15 member states, 15 participating member states. And all of a sudden, of course, ladies in a different pool, you find yourself with all the others, with all your negotiating counterparts, like Mother Nature made you. All the dress code is gone, and you are, you know, a school or a herd or a pack of humans trying to work together. And I can tell you that was quite an experience and certainly a contribution to the spirit that still survives and keeps going in the space station cooperation.
Yes, well, that is a fun memory for me too, because it suddenly brought home to me personally the gender difference in our delegations, because in the female Japanese bath, it was me and Melanie Saunders from Johnson Space Center. The entire Canadian, European, Japanese, and majority of American delegation were all in the men's bath. I'd like to wrap up by saying that I think for me, I certainly have lots of memories of different points in the negotiations and positions we took and so on. But I agree with Pepe. One of the things that is really what is my strongest memory is the personal relationships that we built over the years. The only way you can have successful negotiations, I think, is to get to know one another, to understand our common interests, but also understand our differences, to be able to speak frankly and build those trusts so that in the tough times when you have to make difficult decisions or when you're really pressed because of some domestic issue at home, you can explain it, your partners will understand it, and you can find a common way forward. And I think that is a wonderful legacy for the program and something for all of us to build on as we go to the future. Thank you.